Welcome to the Knowledge Seeker channel. This channel is dedicated to exploring critical issues in the world. The title of this presentation is Igboland Landlocked? A Review. This map shows the 5 states of Igboland in the southeast zone of Nigeria. Introduction. The Igbos are a few of the greatest economic traders in Africa. They can be found in major trading centers of West and Central Africa and other parts of the continent. In Nigeria, they dominate the domestic economy due to their versatility, perseverance, and devotion to the free enterprise economic system. Due to their economic successes and their increasing industrialization of the manufacturing sector, many believe that the Southeast Zone deserves one or two seaports since they are major players in the export and import sectors of the Nigerian economy. The demand for seaports is prompted by the fact that it does not make any sense for traders in the Southeast Zone to travel to Lagos to export or import goods for the Nigerian market when seaports in the region will greatly cut down on the cost of doing business. The desire for seaports prompted a debate about whether seaports for ocean-going vessels are viable in Igboland. This resulted in an argument about whether Igboland is landlocked or not. A notable Nigerian lawyer, Mr. Aloy Ejimako-San, argues emphatically that Igboland is not landlocked and the Igbos should not be deceived to believe otherwise. On the other hand, Dr. Churchill Okonkwo argues strongly that Igboland is landlocked and the Igbos should not be deceived to believe that their territory is not landlocked. Otherwise, they might suffer economic hardship. Many Igbos, especially those that have YouTube channels, tend to agree with Ejimako by insisting that Igboland is not landlocked and that Igbo territory extends contiguously to the Atlantic Ocean. Therefore, the purpose of this presentation is to achieve 2 goals. 1. Review presentations made about the question of whether Igboland is landlocked or not. And 2. Clarify some of the points raised in the presentations in order to enhance the understanding of the complexity of the issues involved. Note, in order to engage in this review, essays written by Aloy Ejimako and Dr. Churchill Okonkwo and 7 YouTube presentations are examined. They include 1. Igboland is not landlocked. We have access to the Atlantic by the voice of the sun. 2. Is Igboland truly landlocked? Join us on the new expedition to Guta Lake by Nna Main TV. 3. Biafra, it's a lie. Igboland is not landlocked. Anchor Network. 4. Exposed. Southeast Seaport is Igboland by Global Hub TV. 5. Igboland is not landlocked by Marius Global TV. 6. Eye Opener, it's a lie. Igboland is not landlocked. You will be by Sintok News. And 7. Is it landlocked? The Geography of Igboland by Igbological. In order to accomplish the goals of the presentation, the following arguments are made. 1. The issues involved in determining whether Igboland is landlocked or not are much more complex than the impressions created by the presentations reviewed on the subject matter. 2. Likewise, the issue of dredging some waterways to create accessibility to the Atlantic Ocean from the southeast zone is also much more complex than it is presented for public consumption. And 3. It is a strategic mistake to underestimate the capabilities of the minority groups whom William Beckey referred to as petty tribes in 1856 in terms of dredging through their lands to the Atlantic Ocean. Now, let's look at the geographical distance from some of the major seaports in Nigeria. After reviewing the essays and the YouTube presentations on the subject matter, it is necessary to differentiate the distance between proximity to the ocean and the dredging distance for depth to the ocean. And there are many reasons for that. A, if Nigeria's coastline is carefully examined, it will show clearly that some cities with seaports are closer to the ocean than others. Thus, the proposed Ibom seaport at Ibeno is about 20 nautical miles to the sea. You feel the ocean at Ibeno. The seaport is moved from Ibaka, which was the original plan. Lagos. Lagos is located by the sea. Hence, you see and feel the ocean when you go to the Bar Beach or places like Lekki or Victoria Island. Warri. Warri is not by the sea. It is about 34 to 40 nautical miles from the ocean. When you are in Warri, you do not see or feel the ocean. Port Harcourt. It is not located by the sea. It is about 35 to 45 nautical miles from the ocean. When you are in Port Harcourt, you do not see or feel the ocean. Calabar. It is not located by the ocean. It is about 40 to 45 nautical miles from the ocean. When you are in Calabar, you do not feel or see the ocean. Now, let's look at dredging for distance to the sea in order to increase depth. The dredging distance to the sea to allow for ships to get to the seaports. Lagos, dredged for about 50 to 60 nautical miles because the ocean bar is shallow. Warri is dredged for about 36 to 40 nautical miles. Port Harcourt, it is dredged for about 50 nautical miles. One, dredged for about 60 nautical miles. Calabar, it is dredged for 45 nautical miles to the sea. Note, despite the dredging distance of 50 to 60 nautical miles, Lagos is actually closer to the ocean than Warri, Port Harcourt, One, and Calabar. That is why you feel the ocean when you are in Lekki or Bar Beach or Victoria Island. If you look at this map very carefully, you see that Lagos is right at the coastline. On the other hand, Warri is slightly inside. Port Harcourt is also slightly inside. Calabar, even though Calabar does not show here, Calabar too is slightly inside. On the other hand, Bonny is by the coastline. Escravos is by the coastline. Odiama is by the coastline. Brass is by the coastline. Akassa is by the coastline, even though they don't show on the map. Here again, you see Lagos is at the coastline. Warri is slightly off the coastline. Port Harcourt is slightly off the coastline. And you can see Calabar too is slightly off the coastline. So of these four major seaports, Lagos is closest to the sea than the other three. Now, to the question, are rivers in Igboland closer to the Atlantic Ocean? Ejimakors Ese and the U2 presenters argue that it is actually shorter to get to the ocean from the rivers in Igboland than from Lagos, Port Harcourt, One, Ibaka, and Calabar. They identified the following rivers and potential seaports in Igboland as being closer to the sea. 1. Obuaku Seaport in Ukwa, west of Abia State, which they estimate to be 25 nautical miles to the Atlantic Ocean. 2. The Azumini River in Abia State is estimated to be about 30 nautical miles to the Atlantic Ocean. 3. The Orashi River in Anambra State, they estimate it to be 80 nautical miles to the Atlantic Ocean. This is the map of Nigeria. You can see the southeast zone is the core Igboland on the eastern part of Igbo territory. And you can see Igboland is bounded by Cross Rivers, Akwa Ibom, Rivers State, Bayelsa, and Delta states. 1. Geographically, the southeast states are farther from the ocean than the coastal states of Akwa Ibom, Rivers, Bayelsa, and Delta. However, and I repeat, however, the point of dredging could make a difference in determining the distance to the Atlantic Ocean. 2. Obuaku Seaport on the confluence of Imo and Azumini seems to have the shortest distance to the Atlantic Ocean by cutting through Ogoniland, Obololand, and Ibibioland to get to Opobo Point of the Atlantic Ocean. 3. Owazo Seaport. Here, the estimated length of 30 nautical miles to the Atlantic Ocean is problematic. The reason is that the plan envisages dredging in an almost straight line to shorten the distance, but rivers do not flow in a straight manner. They meander from corner to corner. Therefore, when the total nautical mileage based on the meandering nature of the river is taken into consideration, the distance might stretch to about 40 nautical miles. Moreover, to create accessibility, even the ocean might be dredged to increase the depth to allow ships to sail through smoothly into the bay. And that could even add more miles to the distance. See, look at the map. You see the straight line, and as you can see, the river in the blue meanders like a snake, while the plan is straight cutting down. So if you're going to estimate the distance by a straight line, then that is an artificial estimation because the river does not go in a straight line. 4. Onitsha Seaport If a seaport is located at Onitsha, as some people have suggested, it means that the Niger River will be dredged both for width and depth, stretching for about 170 nautical miles. Thus, River Niger dredging is going to be massive and longest compared to the Azumini, Imo, and Orashi rivers. See, this is the map of the River Niger. From the Onitsha point to the Atlantic coastline is about 170 miles. So it's a very long dredging operation. For those who are eager to have seaports established in Owazo, Obuako, Ihiala, Azumini, Oguta Lake, and Onitsha, everything about the project sounds so easy. Hence, they wonder why the delay. They wonder why the dredging is dragging on unnecessarily. Well, the situation is much more complicated than has been presented by the exponents of the seaports. These are some of the logistical problems. So please follow me. Let's look at the logistical problems of dredging and establishing seaports in the southeast zone. 1. The type of boats expected to use the seaports in Owazo or Obuako or Ihiala or Onitsha will make a big difference in the complexity of the issues involved. A. If the boats are going to be small to medium size, then the issues are lessened. For example, oil company boats regularly navigate the waterways of the Niger Delta, sometimes going as far inland as the Orashi River near Mbiama and beyond. If this is desired, the projects will require less dredging. This means that the topography would not be altered drastically, and the seaports can be constructed and used effectively. Here you have a regular boat, tugboat, towing a barge along the river. If these are the kind of boats expected to be navigating these rivers, then there are no issues. There is no issue at all about dredging or not dredging. B. However, if the seaports are intended for ocean-going ships, then the logistical problems multiply, thereby complicating the accomplishment of the projects. This is very important. 2. For ocean-going vessels, the Imo, Azumini, and Orashi rivers might require dredging for depth as well as for width. This means that the rivers would have to be widened to about half a mile to a mile to allow for two ships to pass each other. Such width is needed so that a ship can turn around after offloading and loading at the seaports to go back to the sea. So if you think you want ships to come in, then you have to think about major dredging work. 3. Such dredging will alter the landscape drastically, in some cases destroying farmlands. 4. Currently, the rivers are small. This means that the volume of water might not be enough after the rivers have been widened to allow for ocean-going vessels to navigate them. And 5. Moreover, these rivers are on the mainland areas of Nigeria, in the freshwater zone. As a result, they are not likely to receive the full and ebb tidal waves that the ocean produces in the riverine topography of the mangrove forested saltwater zone. Here you have an ocean-going ship. If ocean-going ships are desired at the proposed seaports, then there is no doubt that it's going to involve extensive dredging and widening of the rivers. On the other hand, the seaports in Lagos, Warri, Port Harcourt, and Calabar, as well as the proposed Ibaka or Ibeno seaport in Akwa Ibom State, are located in the zone where the mainland meets the mangrove forested saltwater zone. Hence, they feel the effects of the full and ebb tidal waves of the ocean to increase water volume as well as depth during the full tide. And normally, the cycle is in 12 hours. Every 12 hours, the water will either get into the full tidal mode, or after another 12 hours, it ebbs, goes back to the sea. Then it comes back in again and flows the water. 6. The proposed seaports in Owazo, Obuako, and Ihiala are in a zone where water flows only in one direction. They don't go back and forth. The water flows from the north to the south towards the sea. The water does not flow back from the south to the north due to the lack of full and ebb tides. And that creates a problem. Therefore, during the dry season, the water level might become very low and make it difficult for ocean-going vessels to navigate due to lack of sufficient water. Even the proposed Onitsha seaport is likely to suffer this problem during some dry seasons because River Niger flows in one direction from the north to the south like the other rivers. It should be noted that in the past, the River Niger and its two subsections, namely the Forcados River and the Non-River, used to get very low in some places during the dry season to the extent that some boats could not navigate them. 7. To eradicate this problem, a dam might have to be built around Oguta Lake to redirect water to the Orashi River during some dry seasons. The same thing might have to be done for the Niger, Imo, and Azumini rivers. Another option, apart from building a dam on a lake to redirect the water, is to build water gates, as is common in Europe, where the gates are used to regulate the flow of water to enable boats to pass. In Europe, both the Rhine and Danube rivers flow in the same direction due to the lack of full and ebb tides, except when the Rhine River gets closer to the sea. In these two rivers, the water level is maintained by two ways. A, the snow that accumulates, especially around the mountains during the winter season melts during the spring season, thereby releasing massive quantities of fresh water to increase the volume of water in the two rivers. B. Water control gates like mini dams are built in some parts of the rivers where the water is manipulated to allow boats to pass. So these are the two ways that they try to manipulate the flow of water in these two rivers in Europe. However, even in Europe, there are concerns that climate change that is contributing to an increase in the temperature is reducing the amount of snow that accumulates during the winter. This means that a time may come when the Rhine and Danube rivers will not be able to contain enough water to allow boats and barges to navigate them. Thus, the Owazo, Obuaku, Ihiala, and Onitsha seaports might suffer similar hardship in retaining sufficient water to allow ocean-going vessels to sail through them because they are far away from the riverine zone where the full and ebb tidal waves system regulates the movement of water. In fact, I might even add that even the Panama Canal is beginning to have a reduction in the water level because of climate change, and there is fear that a time may come that ships will not be able to pass through the Panama Canal unless something is done drastically. Why these problems? Because the proposed seaports will be located in a zone that does not have the natural cycles of full and ebb tide, which allows water to go back and forth in cycles of 12 hours. 12 hours full tide, 12 hours ebb tide. 8. To widen the Azumini, Imo, and Orashi rivers, the existing road bridges would have to be destroyed and replaced with longer and higher bridges to enable ships to pass under them. Even in River Niger, if a ship were to use the river, almost all the existing bridges would have to be replaced with higher bridges where ships can pass under them. As can be seen, Lagos, Warri, Port Harcourt, and Calabar, as well as Ibaka or Ibeno, do not have these problems because they are by the riverine topography. They only require dredging and not the rebuilding of roads and bridges, like when you have seaports on the mainland. 9. A major problem in altering the riverways through dredging is that in some of these rivers, particularly River Niger and probably Orashi, there might be flooding, soil erosion, and landfalls. It should be noted that in Forcados, Non, and Orashi rivers, soil erosion and landfalls are major problems afflicting some of the communities that lie along the banks of the rivers. Indeed, all the rivers in Igboland flow through the territories of other ethnic groups to get to the Atlantic Ocean. Why? Because Igboland is located north of the coastal states of Akwa Ibom, Rivers, Bayelsa, and Delta states. Hence, the rivers must flow through the coastal states as well as pass through the territories of other ethnic groups and subgroups that are located in the riverine zone of the coast. As you can see on this map, you see, by the time you get to Ikorabasi, from the Azumini and Imo River confluence, you are passing through Ogoniland as well as Andoni, Obololand, Ibibioland before you get to Pobo. So you are passing through other ethnic groups' territory before you get to Pobo. This is Opobo territory, and it is located strategically close to Ogoni and then close to Ibibioland. So there is no way you can pass without passing through that section of the territory. Now, let's look at the political problems of dredging through other ethnic groups' territories and implications. While those who support establishing seaports in Ihiala, Obuako, Owazo, and Onitsha generally do not realize the complexity of the political circumstances, it is necessary to discuss them here. 1. Abia, Anambra, and Imo states are north of Akwa Ibom, Bayelsa, and River states. This means that before dredging any river downward, negotiations must be made with these states to gain their approval, even after the federal government might have approved the projects, such as the dredging of Azumini and Orashi rivers. However, before Akwa Ibom, Bayelsa, and River states approve the projects, they must first speak to the ethnic and sub-ethnic groups that are situated by the rivers to gain their approval. Why? Because if the ethnic groups are not on board, then their youths might disturb the dredging of the rivers. They are likely to oppose the dredging of their lands without their permission. 2. Even if the ethnic groups and subgroups and the states approve dredging of the rivers, the projects cannot commence without first conducting thorough environmental impact studies. The EIS must meet international standards to convince various groups about the safety of their environment. Dr. Churchill Okonkwo poignantly identified the physical and political problems that are likely to take place in a tumultuous political environment like Nigeria, where issues can erupt unpredictably. Hence, he advised Igbos to be careful and not be misled to believe that they can dredge and sail to the Atlantic Ocean without any problem. Yes, seaports are on the exclusive list, meaning that the federal government makes decisions about establishing seaports. However, since the rivers pass through the territories of other ethnic groups and subgroups, it is necessary to consult them. It should be noted that one major reason the River Niger has not been dredged comprehensively is the fear expressed by the groups and subgroups that are situated along the banks of the Forcados and non-rivers. The inhabitants of the river banks are worried that dredging the rivers will lead to massive soil erosion, landfalls, and flooding that could overflow and wash away their communities. This concern is ongoing, hence the resistance against the dredging of the lower region of the River Niger. Therefore, it is necessary to publicize the EIS when completed to build confidence among the stakeholders along the river. 3. It is a hot political issue. One way to mitigate against the resistance could be to set up a trust fund dedicated to alleviating land erosion and the excess flooding of the communities along the waterways. Note, it should be noted that due to the apathetic manner Nigeria treats the oil region, the communities that live along the river Niger and its two main arteries, the Forcados and non-rivers, have little or no trust in Nigerian promises. They are afraid that after dredging, if their communities are inundated by massive floods or soil erosion, Nigeria will not be there to assist them. So you can understand why there is resistance towards dredging these rivers. 4. Whether it is the dredging of Azumini, Imo, Orashi, or Niger, the groups and sub-ethnic groups must be clearly informed of the advantages, particularly economic and financial rewards, that will benefit them for allowing their lands to be massively dredged for ocean-going vessels. Fifth, if the ethnic and sub-ethnic groups whose territories must be dredged to allow ocean-going vessels to pass through their lands are not seriously negotiated with, it is doubtful whether dredging downwards can take place, regardless of whether the federal government of Nigeria approves the dredging or not. 6. It will be a grievous strategic mistake for the federal government to approve the dredging of any of these rivers without first negotiating with the people. 7. It should be recalled that the Akwa Ibom seaport that was scheduled for construction at Ibaka has been moved to Ibeno, which requires a longer dredging due to the shallowness of the ocean bar compared to Ibaka, which is considered a deep seaport zone. The change of location did not go well with the Oro people, and they petitioned to express their disappointment. Due to the development, the investors withdrew from the project. Hence, the Ibom project is being delayed until the political problems are resolved. Thus, any of the proposed seaports in the southeast zone could meet the same fate if the groups oppose the massive dredging of their territory without serious negotiations. Already, the Orashi River dredging project is controverted. Governor Uzodinma said that the dredging is intended to enable the river to get to the ocean, but not to build a seaport, while others expect a seaport to be built. So which is which? The situation is not clear. Now, What about the need to apply international law to gain access to the sea? Lawyer Ejimako suggested the possibility of applying international law of the sea as well as African Union's law to gain access to the sea. Indeed, there are international and regional laws to address the need to gain access to the sea if Nigeria fails to provide the means to do so. The suggestion is noteworthy, but it should be noted that international law does not work automatically to address territorial grievances. Let's look at some of the situations. One, it is necessary to negotiate with the stakeholders, including the ethnic and sub-ethnic groups that might be affected by the dredging of their territories, to allow for ocean-going ships to navigate the waterways chosen for the dredging. Two, a formal agreement must be completed in which specific responsibilities and obligations are spelled out clearly. Three, the parties must formally sign the agreement to show that they agree. Fourth, it is the formal agreement that will effectuate the application of international law. Without agreement, the effectiveness of international law is questionable, considering the fact that various ethnic and sub-ethnic groups are expected to surrender their lands for massive dredging to allow ocean-going ships to pass through. Moreover, in the Nigerian situation, the issue concerns the transforming of internal waterways into international waterways that might affect some indigenous ethnic groups negatively. It seems that international law is more effective in circumstances dealing with the open seas where there are state rights and obligations. It might be necessary to look at 4 cases dealing with international law of the sea situations and see how they manage those cases. Case 1, the dredging of the Panama Canal. Due to military and economic necessity, in 1902, the US decided to buy the French Canal Company that attempted to build the Panama Canal. To complete the process of having a right to dredge the canal, the US signed the Hay-Eran Treaty with Colombia, which owned Panama in 1903. The US Senate ratified the treaty, but the Colombian Senate refused to ratify the treaty. The US instigated rebellion, resulting in the declaration of independence of Panama on November 3, 1903. It should be noted that Panama was part of Colombia. 6, 1903, the US recognized the independence of Panama. On November 18, 1903, the US and Panama signed the Hay-Buena-Varia Treaty. The treaty granted the US exclusive and permanent control of the Panama Canal Zone in exchange for $10 million and $250,000 annuity after 9 years. The Panama Canal was inaugurated on August 15, 1914. The US increased payments to Panama on an annual basis. The 1903 treaty gave the US the right to control and manage the canal until the 1970s. A new treaty was negotiated and signed. On September 7, 1977. The treaty recognized Panama as the territorial sovereign of the Panama Canal Zone, but gave the US the right to operate the canal until December 31, 1999. On that day, the US handed over to Panama the control and management of the canal with a promise to maintain a policy of neutrality. So Panama promises to maintain neutrality to allow all ships to pass through the canal. Case number 2. The Black Sea and Mediterranean Sea are connected through the Bosphorus Strait. However, the 1936 Montreux Convention, which is a multilateral treaty, allowed civilian ships to pass through the Turkish Strait, but banned certain categories of naval ships of countries who are not from the Black Sea region from passing through the Bosphorus Strait into the Black Sea from the Mediterranean Sea, and vice versa during peacetime. However, due to the Crimea, Russia is considered as part of the Black Sea nations. As a result, it has its naval forces in the region, while the US cannot get to the Black Sea with heavier naval ships because the US is not part of the Black Sea. This allows Russia's navy to dominate the Black Sea region. If any non-Black Sea country tries to enter the Black Sea through the Mediterranean Sea with heavy naval boats, Turkey will prevent the country from doing so. Thus, Turkey, which has territorial sovereignty over the Bosphorus Strait, makes sure the rule is not violated, even by the US, Britain, France, Spain, and so forth. Thus, territorial ownership is very important in international law. Case number 3, the Red Sea. The Israeli versus Hamas war has shown the extent to which Houthi rebels have repeatedly attacked ships passing through the Red Sea, regardless of international law. Even efforts by the US, British, French, Indian, and other navies to stop the attacks have not prevented the Houthi rebels from continuing to do so. Therefore, instead of banking on international law, as A.J. McCall suggested, it is preferable to negotiate with the ethnic and sub-ethnic groups first to gain access through their territories. Otherwise, regardless of any agreement Nigeria makes, if the people are not brought into the negotiations, the dredging could be opposed. Moreover, like the Red Sea situation, no shipping company will want to pass through a hostile river channel. That is why negotiation is very important with the groups that occupies the river banks of these rivers. Case number 4, Niger Republic. The effort to have access to the sea by the southeast is similar to the Republic of Niger situation. Just as rivers originate from Igboland and flow to the Atlantic Ocean, the River Niger passes through the country to get to Atlantic Ocean in Nigeria. Niger Republic cannot claim that it is not landlocked even though River Niger passes through its territory to the ocean. It can only get to the sea by negotiating a bilateral treaty with Nigeria where both agree to dredge the river to allow ships to pass through. Using similar logic, ships can only get to Igboland after a thorough negotiation with the ethnic groups that border the ocean. Otherwise, it could be politically problematic, as Dr. Okongwo suggested. Look at this map. This is the map of West Africa. You see, River Niger starts from Guinea, flows through Mali into Niger, from Niger into Nigeria, and then end up in the Atlantic Ocean. You see? So even though the river passes through Niger to Nigeria, Niger cannot say it has access to the ocean. It can only do so by negotiating with Nigeria to gain the access. Otherwise, it cannot. Now, some of the presenters talk about the fact that Eastern Nigeria was divided after the Civil War and things of that sort. I think some clarifications need to be made here. One, the splitting of Eastern Nigeria did not begin after the Civil War, and neither was it caused by abandoned property. No. Two, it should be noted that the minority groups which William Beckey referred to as petty tribes in Eastern Nigeria and throughout Nigeria started to demand separation from the three major ethnic groups during the colonial period. They felt uncomfortable being in the same regions with three of the most populous ethnic groups in Africa, not only in Nigeria. In fact, Nigeria is only one of a few countries in Africa that have three of the largest, most populated ethnic groups in the continent. Three, hence, the minorities demanded the creation of states during Henry Willing's Commission hearings in 1957-1958. Britain declined to create states before granting independence to Nigeria. Hence, Nigeria gained independence on October 1st, 1960. Fifth, due to frustrations, the first major thief riots took place also in 1960. 6. Undeterred by Henry Willing's Commission failure to create states, the minority groups in each region continued to demand separation from the three major ethnic groups. The minorities in the north demanded a middle belt state. The minorities in the east demanded the creation of Calabar Ogoja Rivers State. The minorities in the west demanded the creation of Midwest State. Seventh, eventually, the Midwest region was established in 1963. However, the core state and the Middle Belt state did not come to pass. Eighth, the thieves carried out another massive riot in 1964 in which the police and military were deployed to stop the rioters. Many people were killed. 9. as the Eastern region contemplated secession by conducting a consultative assembly in Enugu, the minorities put pressure on General Yakubu Gowon to create the 12 states on May 27, 1967, to preempt the Biafran Declaration of Independence on May 30, 1967. It should be made clear that the minority groups were responsible for putting pressure on the federal government to create 12 states, including East Central State, Southeastern State, and Rivers State in the former Eastern region on May 27, 1967, before the Civil War. General Yakubu Gowon is from a minority ethnic group in the Middle Belt, so he knew how the minorities in Nigeria felt. 10. Additional states were created after the Civil War. 11. Yes, state creation split Igboland, Tiv land, Ijaw land, Hausa land, and so forth. It is not only the Igbos that suffer from the splitting due to state creation. Indeed, the Tivs are split into Adamawa, Benue, Cross River, Nasarawa, Plateau, Taraba, and possibly Abuja, the Federal Capital Territory. The Ijaws are split into Akwa Ibom, Bayelsa, Delta, Edo, Ondo, and River states. The Jokuns are split into Adamawa, Bauchi, Benue, Gombe, Nasarawa, Plateau, and Taraba states. So it is not only the Igbos that are split due to state creation. Now, is Igboland landlocked? To carry out an objective response to the question, it might be necessary to examine each of the rivers to know whether they pass through the territories of other ethnic and sub-ethnic groups. 1. River Niger. River Niger passes through Igboland to Ijaw land, Isoko land, Urhobo land before discharging at the riverine topography in escravos around the Warri area. At the end of the Igbo part of the Niger River, the river passes through Ijaw, Isoko, and possibly Urhobo and Ishekri territories. These groups must have to support the dredging, otherwise there might be political opposition to dredging the River Niger. Thus, whether Nigeria approves dredging or not, the groups must be consulted and brought on board to support the plan. 2. The Orashi River. A careful examination of the waterway on the map clearly shows that the river passes through Igboland, Engeni land, from Mbiama, Epiatisa, Yenagua, Ogbia land, Abua land, and Kalabari land before discharging through Sombrero River to the Atlantic Ocean. The Orashi River does not end in the Atlantic Ocean because it ends in Sombrero River. It is Sombrero River that flows to the Atlantic Ocean from the Degama and Abonima junction. Therefore, to dredge the river, the Engeni, Epiatisa, Ogbia, Abua, and Kalabari nations, as well as Bayelsa and River states, must be consulted and brought into the plan if the desire is to dredge for ocean-going ships. This further means that the Ijaw National Congress must be consulted also. The Owazo seaport. To support this seaport, the Imo River must be dredged from Igboland through either Ogoniland or Obololand or both to get to Ikorabasi, which connects Ibibioland in Akwa Ibom State before reaching Opobo, whichever is the case. The Opobo junction of the sea must also be dredged to increase depth at the ocean bay to allow ships to pass from the ocean into the bay and then to the river. It will require massive dredging to increase the width and the depth. Again, either the Ogoni or the Obolo and Ibibio, as well as Rivers and Akwa Ibom states, must be consulted and brought on board. Otherwise, opposition is likely to take place. Fourth, Azumini River. To support a seaport, the Azumini River must also be dredged from Ndoke and possibly passing through Ogoniland or Obololand and Ibibioland to get to Ikorabasi before reaching Opobo Junction in order to get to the ocean, if ocean-going ships are desired for navigating the river. Again, the length of dredging will stretch to about 40 nautical miles when the Opobo side of the dredging is considered. Thus, the Ogoni or Obolo or Ibibio and Opobo people, as well as Rivers and Akwa Ibom states, must be brought on board the plan through serious negotiations. The Ijaw National Congress too must be consulted. See, here again you see the Imo River, Azumini River, they go pass through Ogoniland to Andoniland for getting to Ikorabasi, then from there to Opobo. And the river meanders, and it's not on a straight line. That is why the dredging will take about 40 nautical miles, not 25, not 30. Now, let's look at the dredging length of the rivers. 1. River Niger. Quite contrary to the view that the dredging to the sea from Onitsha is only about 16 nautical miles, the River Niger stretches through Forcados River for 170 miles or 147.7 nautical miles, whichever is the case. 2. Orashi River. Quite contrary to the general view that dredging the river from Oguta Lake to the sea is only 18 nautical miles, the fact is that the river stretches for 205 kilometers or 110.6 nautical miles. 3. Imo River. The dredging plan indicates a straight line from the Owazo seaport to the Atlantic for 25 to 30 nautical miles. The fact that rivers meander and do not go in a straight line means that it will extend to 30 to 40 nautical miles. 4. Azumini River. The dredging of this river will extend to about 40 nautical miles to get to Opobo through Ikorabasi axis. The reason is that no river ever flows in a straight line. All rivers meander, thereby adding to the mileage, except you want to dredge a water channel. That is a different ball game entirely. Now, let's sum up the distance in dredging. 1. The junction from the Azumini Imo River's confluence to the Atlantic Ocean is the shortest distance considering the topography and water content. So here the presenters are correct. It appears to be the shortest distance to the ocean. The River Niger, either through Forcados or none, is the longest to dredge. 3. The Orashi River is the second longest to dredge, not 18 nautical miles, please. Conclusion. To address the question of whether Igboland is landlocked or not, and the dredging of some waterways to the Atlantic Ocean, the first response is to determine what kind of dredging is anticipated. 1. If the dredging is intended to allow small to medium-sized boats, tugboats, barges, and passenger boats that generally navigate along the internal waterways of any country, yes, the projects are easily doable. In fact, there will be no argument about opening those kind of ports, seaports in Igboland. 2. However, if the desire is to dredge the aforementioned rivers to allow ocean-going ships or vessels, then the issues become very complex due to the consequences of the massive altering of the landscape of various ethnic and sub-ethnic groups. It is necessary to take that into consideration. 3. The River Niger and Orashi rivers are the longest rivers to dredge in terms of distance to the Atlantic Ocean. Therefore, it is about 110 nautical miles to dredge the Orashi River to the Sombrero River, not 18 nautical miles. 4. The shortest distance to dredge are the Imo and Azumini River confluence, starting from the confluence. 5th, the River Niger, Orashi River, Imo River, and Azumini River pass through the territories of other ethnic groups and subgroups. This implies that serious negotiations must be carried out to ensure that the groups affected support the dredging of their territories to alter the landscape. 6. The Akwa Ibom, Bayelsa, Delta, and River states must be included in the negotiations if large-scale dredging of the rivers to allow for ships to navigate is anticipated. Otherwise, such mammoth dredging will not come to pass, whether the federal government approves the plans or not, because the ethnic groups and states will resist the desire to massively alter their territories without their consent. 7. If the seaports are built for ocean-going vessels, the rivers might not be able to contain enough water to allow for ships to pass through during some of the dry seasons when the water level is low. Note, it should be noted that water flows only in one direction, from the north to the south, always in River Niger, Orashi River, Imo River, and Azumini River. The reason is that they are on the mainland, and the proposed seaports will not benefit from the natural oceanic cycles of the full and ebb tides that enable water to flow back and forth in 12-hour cycles. On the other hand, the Lagos, Port Harcourt, Warri, Calabar, and the proposed Ibom seaport at either Ibaka or Ibeno enjoy the effects of the oceanic full and ebb tidal waves. Therefore, to answer the question of whether Igboland is landlocked or not, it might be necessary to use points made by the presenters. 1. Although all the YouTube presenters, including the essay by Aloy Ejimako, concluded that Igboland is not landlocked, however, they inadvertently weaken their positions by citing international law and Beke's historical notation to justify their conclusion. Why? A. Any ethnic group that has a contiguous territory extending to the ocean would not threaten to apply international law and the African Union to justify the right to gain access to the sea. It is only an ethnic group that does not have a contiguous territory extending to the sea that is likely to use such an approach. Therefore, when the presenters quoted international laws to justify the need for Ndi Igbo to gain access to the sea, they are saying that Igboland is landlocked. Thus, they agree with Dr. Okonkwo, even though that is not what they mean. For instance, the Ibibio, Ijo, Ishekri, Ilaje, Lagos, that is the Awori, Oro, and Yoruba, do not need international or an African Union law to justify why they should have access to the sea because their territories extend contiguously to the ocean. B. If the presenters had presented strong geographical evidence indicating a contiguous territory extending to the sea, they would not have resorted to quoting international law to justify access to the sea. 2. The presenters also betrayed their conclusion that Igboland is not landlocked by quoting Beke to explain Igbo nation's geographical spread. Why? Just as Beke aptly described the geographical spread of the Igbo nation in the 19th century, he also indicated that there are petty tribes, some being Igbo and some not being Igbo, that separates Igboland from the coast. The fact that he mentioned petty tribes, as Ejimako indicated, shows that Igboland does not extend contiguously to the sea because there are smaller non-Igbo ethnic groups between Igboland and the sea. This means that to get to the sea today, the Igbos have to deal with the Abua Udwal, Obolo Andoni, Ibibio, Engeni, Epiatisa, Ogbia, Kalabari, Oro, Ishekri, Isoko, possibly Urobo, and so forth. B. Again, the presenters would not have referred to Beke to justify the reach of Igboland if they had strong geographical evidence to show the contiguity of the territory to the sea. As you can see, I've shown this map before. There is no way you can pass from the Azumini Imo River junction to the sea through Opobo without passing through Ogoni land, Andoni land, and probably Ibibio land before getting to the sea. It would be a strategic mistake to ignore the political significance of the small ethnic groups. If dredging for ocean-going vessels is needed in Obuako, Owazo, Ihiala, and Onitsha, therefore negotiate and establish a working relationship with them to have access to dredge through their territories. It is not merely enough to negotiate with Nigeria due to the exclusive list and ignore them as if they do not exist or are too insignificant. It should be noted that the Ogonis successfully stopped Nigeria and the oil companies from operating in their territory for more than 20 years. I may also add that when President Buhari tried to establish cattle colonies, Nigeria's ethnic group opposed the idea, and that is why up till today there are no cattle colonies or ranches in Nigeria, because the ethnic groups protect their territories. Finally, being landlocked does not mean that Igboland does not have rivers, streams, creeks, and tributaries that stretch to the coastal reaches of the Atlantic Ocean. It simply means that Igbo territory does not extend contiguously to the Atlantic Ocean without passing through the territories of other ethnic groups. Thank you for listening to this presentation. Please subscribe to the channel and listen to other captivating presentations. Again, thank you very much.